Today we often hear such phrases as train your mind, or in order to get anywhere in life you need a strong mind. And in order to train it, you must put yourself through immense levels of discomfort. However, the mind is much more complicated, and while training it will have some levels of discomfort attached to it, it is not what it is all about. Today I'll try to give you some ideas on how to look at the mind, as well as talk about on why and how would one train it. If you're new to the channel, I'm Water Monk, and here I try to explore topics related to mindfulness, a skill that will help us stay in the present moment and enjoy it more, which is the key to living a happier life. Because let's be real here, the present moment is all we really have. So what is a strong mind? This term is very common amongst ultra runners, for example, and is often confused with one's ability to push through pain. While there is some sense there, training your mind and the ability to withstand pain is not the same. For example, I have spent many hours running and have run a few ultramarathons myself. And if I realized one thing, that a strong mind is not the one that is able to push through pain, it's the one that is able to not engage in one's conscious experience and just observe it. What I mean by that is that the mind is actually quite complex. I have covered how the mind works in more detail in a different video. I'll link it somewhere here and it will be in the description if you're interested. However, the main idea is that we have little control of what we experience consciously. Do not mistake conscious thought with the ability to control the mind. Your mind is sort of like an animal, and all you can really do is tame it to a certain degree. A strong mind is one that is able to disassociate itself from the contents of your consciousness. In other words, one that is able to take a step back and observe what's going on in one's consciousness without engaging in it. The topic of the mind and how we can train it has been studied for thousands of years by a broad range of traditions. Our ancestors have studied this topic to the deepest degree, and we can use some modern day ideas to tap into their knowledge. I like to wrap mind training in this word mindfulness, which also gets thrown around in various contexts these days. But the way I see it, mindfulness is a skill, a multidimensional skill which essentially shows how well you can use your mind. It is usually explained as one's ability to be fully present and engaged in the now, and that is exactly what a strong mind is able to do. This all may be highly subjective, since all of the activity of the mind happens, well, internally. In other words, only you can really tell how strong your mind is. However, there are very concrete and not subjective skills that will make your mind stronger, and those are attention and awareness. Attention is to intentionally direct and sustain the attention of scope to anything we choose, and the ability to control the size of the scope. For example, consider how your vision works. In order to see something in full detail, you must hold your gaze steady for as long as necessary, while not focusing too much or too little. And your awareness is the ability to notice everything else, to notice things in the background. For example, right now your attention is focused on this video, but at the same time you might also be aware of your breathing, the sound of appliances, or whatever else is going on in your surroundings. These two skills combined create mindfulness, a skill that allows you to use your mind in such a fashion where you can always be fully present in the moment. So why would we want to learn this skill? There are many skills to learn. Why this one? Why would we want to train our mind and mindfulness? Well, think of it this way. Everything we think, feel, or do from one moment to the next essentially depend on interactions between attention and awareness. And mindfulness is the ideal interaction between the two. In other words, training your mind, training mindfulness can change everything we do, feel, or say for the better. So it can completely change the kind of person you are. Furthermore, mindfulness highly relates to a state called flow. This state is described as when you are just so engaged in an activity that your consciousness and action melt into one. The activity has to be challenging enough, but not too much, and there has to be immediate feedback of how you are doing at each step in some form of sensations. In the words of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist who first described the state of flow, people typically feel strong, alert, in effortless control, unself-conscious, and at the peak of their abilities. Both the sense of time and emotional problems seem to disappear, and there is an exhilarating feeling of transcendence. This often occurs in sports, and for example, I think runners mistakenly call this state runner's high, when in reality it is just a state of flow. Many studies have actually shown that people feel happiest during these states. I have covered one study in a different video where I talk about the importance of mindfulness in our lives. I'll link it somewhere here and you'll find it in the description if you're interested. What is your most memorable experience of flow, where you were so fully engaged and happy? Let me know in the comment section. I would love to read all about it. Having a strong mind can help you create the state of flow at will, essentially. In other words, it can help you be fully engaged in the now, which for our usual everyday Western culture person is very hard to do these days. Imagine almost your whole run feeling like the runner's high. That is what a strong mind can do. Think of it this way: your mind, your conscious experience, is constantly bombarded by information from the outside world and the inside world. With a strong mind, you can create a better conscious experience because you will be able to exclude certain things that make it worse and include certain things that will make it better. For example, consider you are taking a walk. You are walking without any external stimuli, without listening to music or listening to some podcast, and you are getting bombarded by anxious thoughts about the past or the future. A strong mind is able to shift its scope of attention to, say, your breath sensations and leave the thoughts in the background. A weak mind, however, will automatically jump on those thoughts, start analyzing them, in turn creating more anxiety and more stress and more thoughts. Another important thing to realize is that while we are talking about your subjective experience of the mind, training mindfulness can actually change the structure of your brain, the actual organ. Meditation is the best skill to train this, and many studies have shown how it can create structural brain changes over longer periods of time. For example, some neuroscientists have shown that meditators who have spent many hours practicing have unusually dense tissue in the areas of the brain that are linked to empathy, love, and joy. This means you can literally rewire your brain for happiness. And there are many other reasons why you would want to train your mind, but let's talk about how would one do it. So now we know that it is not all about pushing through discomfort and more about developing this observer perspective, this ability to disassociate yourself from the contents of your consciousness. This requires a combination of both very strong attention and awareness. To really train awareness and the combination of the two, you will first need a certain degree of stability in your attention, because without it, any mindfulness practice will consist of mind-wandering, physical discomfort, and intense internal debates over whether 5 minutes is enough for the day. While meditation is definitely the best skill to train your attention, at least in my experience, any other activity that has a repetitive component to it can help you train it as well. For example, when you are walking, you can put your attention on your feet and notice how weight is shifting from one place to the next as you walk. Or you can place your attention on your hips and try to notice how they are rotating on each step. Or when you are running, for example, each time you take a step, you're balancing on one foot essentially. And while you're balancing on one foot, a lot of muscles are firing, starting from your feet all the way up your glutes and core. The key is that the action is repetitive enough and there are small sensations to lock our attention to. This will eventually teach our mind to be fully engaged in the smallest of sensations. You can also train your attention and your ability to be fully present by doing some guided mindfulness practice. For example, there's this practice called Yoga Nidra or non-sleep deep rest that helps you rest and relax where all you do is listen to a recording. Or you could do some guided breathworks, for example. I have some of these non-sleep deep rest recordings as well as some guided breathworks on my channel that will help you elevate your mood, energy, reduce stress, anxiety, and improve your overall health markers. The link to the playlists will be in the description if you're interested. Once you have a good degree of stability in your attention, you can try and cultivate awareness. Both attention and awareness can be internal and external. In other words, you can be attending to the outside world, which is mostly sensory input, and the inside world, mostly consisting of mental objects such as thoughts and emotions. Neither is more important than the other, but training internal attention and awareness is highly difficult without isolating yourself from the outside world. That's why meditation is probably the best skill to train that. Not only will it isolate you from the outside world, it will help you train attention and awareness in full isolation from everything else. For the beginning, your goal is to simply keep your scope of attention on your breath. And that is harder than it may sound, but it is actually a good thing. Going back to the idea of the flow state, since paying attention for sustained amounts of time is highly challenging, it will lead to glimpses of the flow state. And remember, we are happiest during these states of flow. And it doesn't matter how good you are, trying to pay attention on minuscule things for extended periods of time will always be challenging. This is because mind wandering is a natural tendency of the mind, and we have to always battle it with our attention and awareness. Even the most skilled and adept meditators experience mind wandering. It just lasts a lot shorter than for most people. Same goes for activities like running, for example. I have spent many hours running without any external stimuli, just trying to pay attention to the smallest of sensations of how my feet are striking the ground, how my hips are moving, or what thoughts are popping into my consciousness at each step. Even after all those hours, I cannot sustain my scope of attention on one thing for the whole run, even if it's less than an hour, let's say. However, the balance between mind wandering and sustained attention has greatly shifted towards the attention side. So to conclude, try to look at mind training as in training any other skill. There will be many hurdles along the way, but if you stay consistent and do it wholeheartedly, great rewards await you. As with any other skill, remember that the key is to gradually challenge yourself more and more. I hope this has given you a different perspective of what mind training might mean. If you found this interesting, you might also enjoy this video where I talk about how to start enjoying meditation, or this video where I talk about 5 things I wish I knew about breathing that have completely transformed my life. Thank you all so very much for watching, stay mindful, and I hope to see you in the next one.